Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center.
I remember one of the first times that I went to Sunday service, and I was pretty nervous because I was like, oh, you got to meditate for a really long time. But it wasn't, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I think it's always harder, like the anticipation of meditating for a long time than the actual meditation itself. Mm-hmm. But I remember like in the middle of the meditation, somebody tapped my shoulder and they said, Dokusan? And I was like, what? And
that's a weird thing to do.
Yeah, so they're like, do you want to talk to a sensei? And I was like, about what? And I was like, very confused. But I think I did go that first time. And, I had some questions about, like, should you sit through the pain or should you stop, meditating if you're feeling in pain? And, of course, I have come to realize that, like, yeah, you should try to, but obviously, like, I think it is a personal question of, like, your own body and what you can take and if you're injuring it or not. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, I haven't done a lot of Dokusans because I sometimes wonder, like, what am I supposed to talk about? Do I have to come up with these profound questions before I talk with sensei and stuff like that. So, but I know that you do Dokusan regularly, mm-hmm. and I figured people might have questions about that. So I just wanted to ask you, first off, what are some things that you and sensei talk about in Dokusan? And what is Dokusan? I mean, I guess I never even said what it was. I just said, oh, I didn't really know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dokusan is a face-to-face meeting with the teacher. It's a long-standing Buddhist tradition, and the Zen flavor of it is one of the things that is most definitive of Zen practice life to me. I understand that it doesn't seem to be something as essential as Zazen to many people, and many Zen practitioners, yourself included, don't have Dokusan as a central feature of their practice, and many Zen students don't have individual teachers that they could meet with and have Dokusan even if they wanted to. But I don't really think of it as separate from my daily practice at all. It's the opportunity to have a genuine encounter with what's outside of my own experience in practice. And that seems to me to be what a teacher is for, is to be the manifestation of something that couldn't possibly be something I'm making up for myself, another point of view. And it's something that I do every week. And it was one of the things I was seeking out by joining a Sangha at all, was that sort of audience with someone who's been doing this a long time and can defuse any of the ticking time bombs of the traps and delusions and neuroses of my practice. And so that's what he does with me. But there's so much. I could list things we talk about, but they only kind of come up by accident.
Sure.
The thing that I would really say that we do is try and figure out how to be in each other's presence. And it's this because of the openness that we have to the process and to the understanding that we have of each other and why we're engaged in this process. There are way fewer inhibitions in talking face to face than there are with most people I talk to face to face, one-on-one. and
inhibitions.
yeah, about what to talk about or what's allowed to come out or what, or what the point really is. And we just tunnel down and down and down until we're talking about until the words are sort of secondary, pointing at, until the finger pointing at the moon drops away and the moon is there. The things we talk about are kind of always just ways of getting to not talking to the end of the conversation. They aren't really what we're there to do, to me.
A lot of Buddhist texts are this kind of like a question and response between like a monk and Buddhist teacher. In fact, well, Ian's been reading sort of this abridged version of the Shobogenzo, which is Dogen's teachings, and that's what they are. It's just some monk who is writing these conversations down. And so Ian's always like, last night Dogen said, because that's how they always start off. They start off, last night Dogen said, and you'll tell me what Dogen said last night. But I'm wondering if like Dokusan is ever like those kinds of stories with the monks and the priests.
Sure. Well, that format that's passed down in text is usually a public format, which we also do in our Sangha.
Yeah.
And, getting up and asking a question and getting an answer in front of the whole Sangha has this whole charged dynamic of everybody listening and the reactions in the room and, the sort of staged performance aspect of it. And traditionally, Dokusan is also like that. Especially on retreat. Traditionally, Dokusan is very scary. You have to enter the private room where the teacher's sitting and you have to bow and sit down and like it has sort of that same charged quality, but that's not how FaceTime Dokusan is with our sensei, though hopefully we'll move to doing it in person at some point soon and at least some of the time. I don't know that. I mean, most people probably don't get that opportunity, but I feel like, from time to time I will be able to meet with him.
Yeah, my Dokusan was face to face because, like I said, it was during Sunday service.
Right. And I could just go to him at the time we would normally meet. Probably, I think that would be something he would be very happy to do. And so then it might take on this like boost of energy of the real face to face encounter. But what we're doing is really kind of having a phone call. But on a certain level, in terms of the humor and the absurdity of the things we talk about, it definitely has that quality, or at least it should. I usually end up coming in and complaining about something in my life, which is also often what I do with you. And then but it leads us to a conversation about the real great matter, and that's the thing I'm practicing with Sensei all the time is just connecting the mundane things that happen to me to the real deal.
And I'm being really specific with you because I want this to benefit someone who might have been thinking about doing it, or myself. Asking for a friend. Okay, my question is like, you said that you talk about, like, you complain a little bit about something that's going on in your life. And I wonder, do you frame that in a Zen way, or do you just straight up like my daughter's keeping me up crying at night?
What's not Zen about that way? That's how I complain about it to you on here, right?
That's true. I mean, but we like in our conversations, I do feel like we try to bring, it's not hard. I'm not saying like it's a difficult task to do, but we try to bring the solution or our ideas or conversation back to a Zen sphere.
Yeah. You mean in like an overt, formal, technical way, vocabulary way, like that, like to make it talking about something Zen, like,
yeah.
What I'm getting at is like, everything is the practice, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Well, my question is, what would be the difference between talking to Sensei and talking to a therapist?
Oh, well, wow. Actually, that makes me stop and think harder about the question before answering it. because that kind of did occur to me at the end of my time seeing the therapist last year and joining the Sangha. We talked about that transition a little bit on our episode devoted to therapy. But basically what happened was I joined the Sangha and started to realize that Zen practice was what I needed at the time, not therapy. So I broke up with my therapist on that basis. I was like finding the kind of dialogue I needed in Dokusan rather than in therapy. So what was the difference? I mean, I think that the difference for me was that inevitably the nature of the conversation in therapy was more self-centered. It was more about, I mean, I don't want to be uncharitable to myself. It was about honoring and cherishing and taking care of the self who was suffering through talking about what it was like. Whereas with Sensei, I am released from that sense of suffering from it by talking about it and letting it open it up effortlessly into talking about all beings, life and death, the entire soap bubble universe on which I am just floating on the surface, So the suffering and the turmoil of the individual situations that I come in with are really just single expressions, one blade of grass in the entire field of manifestations of what we're really talking about. So how does it get there? I mean, I could bring that a little more down to earth by saying like trying to describe what the flow of such a conversation is. But it's like, I come in talking about my kids keeping me up at night, and inevitably that leads me to talking about being tired, which inevitably leads me to talking about difficulties in Zen practice because of being tired. Or if not Zazen, then some precepts related thing about just like not being able to keep my act together to be with my family, or, getting frustrated and raising my voice, or, whatever other behavioral things that I attribute in some kind of causal sense to being tired because my kids kept me up at night. And through talking through that whole chain of stuff, I realize the, impermanence and absurdity of all of the ideas that I'm linking together about all of these things, and just let go of them. And suddenly, we're not talking about my kids keeping me up at night anymore. We're talking about existence. And we often end up in similar places by the end of the conversation, even if we start from a bewildering variety of different places because of that process. And so maybe one other way of saying what's the difference between this and therapy is that therapy holds on to one particular thread of what's wrong, and Dokusan for me lets go of whatever's wrong. And usually what that means is that nothing was really wrong. It's not, it's a therapy of realizing that there wasn't a problem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool, but there are problems sometimes. And the conversation can sometimes just kind of turn into advice from an elder to a younger person.
Yeah.
When there is a real problem at hand. And that advice definitely also carries flavors of Zen practice and attitude, but doesn't have to have some kind of metaphysical lesson or, spiritual like meaning. It can just be about attention and focus and mood and sleep and, embodiment and things that help you along the way, which is, not separate from Zazen.
Why do you think that traditionally, only a priest can give Dokusan?
I mean, I think it's a really good rule, actually. Like because the path is very dangerous for everyone. I mean, in fact, and this is something I feel like Sensei would probably say if he hasn't already said it to me, is that it's 100% fatal. So like you have to be careful. And the a lot of the insurance of Dokusan comes from just life experience. That Sensei's 80 years old and I'm not, and so he's seen some things that I have not seen, or seen things many times that I've only seen once, and that just comes from experience. But then I think it's very important that these practices that we do that expose us to reality can have side effects and consequences that you do need to have personal experience with in order to know how to handle. But I think that you also have to be vetted in this exact way by other teachers to be sure that you're a stable and trustworthy enough person for another person to confide in you this way. And that's what the process is of becoming a priest, which is again a word that isn't really a Japanese word. It's like a westernization. But that's what that process is for making sure that this is a person who can be trusted to offer Dokusan. And that doesn't always work, but I find in my encounters with Taiyun Roshi that the experience that has been confirmed by the outward forms of Zen to him, like in him, is genuine, and I trust it.
And have you ever done anything like Dokusan in Judaism?
Oh, sure. It's a very, very common form in Jewish life with all kinds of rabbis in all kinds of Judaism and in all kinds of roles. The roles of a rabbi are very many and varied. There are rabbis in lots of different situations, and they're all sort of available for that sort of thing. A big part of the job of a rabbi is counseling as when people are going through things, and good, happy things, sad things, easy things, hard things. Meeting with the rabbi. Every rabbi I know makes even like, and I'm talking, not entrepreneurial one. Well, she does too. My wife is making up everything as she goes along as far as what her career is, and she makes time for people in this way. But also, like, scheduled rabbis employed by synagogues also make time on their schedules and have like assistants who schedule meetings with congregants face to face to talk about issues like this. So yeah, I've talked to many rabbis about many things.
I mean, would you talk about different things, or? Well,
I would talk. I couldn't. I don't. Part of the issue that it causes me to find myself in the situation in which I find myself in life is that I don't really get a lot out of talking to most Jewish religious people about spirituality. Not all, like, there are many that I have had some of the most profound conversations about spirituality in my life with religious Jews, but it's really like an individual basis. Like, I need to know the person as a person in order to know whether that's going to be a conversation I'm going to want to have. Just being a rabbi does not qualify someone to be someone I want to have that conversation with. So I've had lots of bad conversations with rabbis about spiritual practice, and that is, I do, and I don't think that's their fault. I think that comes down to the just sort of constitutional differences in, most Jewish people and their spiritual practice versus me and my spiritual practice, and I just, to say it simply, I need Zen practice. And that's not what most rabbis do. There are rabbis who have that experience, with whom I have certainly interesting conversations about spiritual practice. But I tend to find them to be more on a sort of intellectual philosophical level,
Uh-huh.
parsing sort of differences and similarities. And it's interesting, but it's not the same thing as Dokusan, because I'm not talking to somebody who has seen what I've seen in Zen practice. Now, someone who has seen what I've seen in Jewish practice is someone that I love to talk about spiritual practice with, but I've met very few Jews who have, which isn't to say there aren't tons of Jews who have. It's just that they're typically much more observant religious Jews than the people that I'm around. So when I've talked to rabbis in a sort of in confidence in this one-on-one way, it has tended to be more about social things, relationship things, community things, which certainly have their spiritual importance, and the role of spiritual practice and the divine presence and all kinds of other Jewish religious concepts is central to those conversations. But it's about something, and I need advice, and that's not, I don't need advice when I'm talking to sensei. I'm talking to sensei as a form of practice.
Interesting. I guess I didn't think about it that way. I always thought about it as like a troubleshooting, maybe.
On retreat, it's different, or even in a one day, like in the midst of long practice, like you did it. On retreats, I have talked to teachers about my legs hurting, as like what came up in Dokusan. I've had that exact conversation, and actually really profound release has come in those retreats through those conversations by sort of getting an adjustment. It's like getting a posture adjustment. And I do think troubleshooting is a valid way of thinking about what Dokusan is. That doesn't make it not part of the practice, There's trouble. You get in trouble in this practice. You gotta troubleshoot.
Yeah, for sure. Just there's all sorts of things that can happen. Like you were talking about, like delusions for one.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like a lot of people like get overly excited about some of the sensations or things that happen while you meditate. And I mean, I'm only going to bring it up just as as an example, but not to try to get excited about it. It was just like I was meditating for a while and I really thought that I could stick my hand through the wall. I don't think I tried. Well, maybe I did, but no, I don't think I did. But I was like, I think I could though.
and that's something you would have liked to have talked to someone about?
No, I don't think so. I don't know what kind of value that sort of sensation holds to the practice.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, like the Soto response is always nothing special, right?
Right.
And that can be really frustrating. I've gotten responses from sensei about that sort of thing that have been frustrating. Nothing as intense as what you're describing. Although I don't know. I mean, what I mean by that is it wasn't anything so definitive. It wasn't like a shift in understanding. It was just a sensation or like a wordless experience that I was trying to describe.
Right.
But there's a wink to that saying. I've always felt nothing special. Like this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like there's something sly about it. And once it's happened enough times, you get why that's funny and enjoy thinking of it as nothing special. And that's the place you want to get to with your teacher.
Yeah.
I feel like
enjoying it without getting attached to it is part of the practice.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I'm interested in why you're not doing it. It's one of Sensei's favorite things to do with people in our community. And you expressed at the beginning, you expressed some reservations about not knowing what to talk about or do I need to come prepared in some way? I'm wondering if that's it or if there's more to it.
Well, there's a little bit of that. I mean, it's a part of it is just scheduling.
Sure. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I reschedule on him constantly and it must drive him insane.
Yeah, and I would like to for sure, but I struggle with my schedule as it is right now.
Yeah.
I guess some of the difficulty of working is starting to show it, and it's usually because of scheduling conflicts. I go to doctor visits every week. That's kind of been a struggle to like make up the time for work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's work is very flexible about me just up and leaving if I'm not, obviously there's no like client calls or important things to do, but
Yeah.
we can schedule around it pretty easily. But yeah, I'm just been struggling for a while with adding more things in my life, even if they're positive.
Yeah.
Just because I have sort of a fear of having too much on my schedule, because
Yeah.
I'll get like kind of stressed out if I have too many things to do. So it's tough. I just know that if I'm going to prioritize Zen, then it is going to be in the form of meditation. And I wish there was more I could give right now.
Hmm.
But I'm not I'm not there yet. And I always kept thinking like, well, maybe when my bachelor's degree is over, I'll be able to put more into Zen, or maybe when my master's degree is over, or maybe when I find a job or whatever. And like, yeah, this have all happened, and I'm still feeling
Maybe
like I
when my
can't
kids
fit
graduate
another.
from high school, I'll have more time from Zen. Yeah. I know the feeling.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I would like to do, and that's unfortunate. It is part of our householder practice is
Hmm.
finding the time to do all these things and keep up with our householder responsibilities as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one of these forms of monastic practice that is interesting to see translated into householder life. Dokusan, I mean, that,
Yeah.
that would be a regularly scheduled thing in a monk's daily life. And, which practices get translated out of the monastery into, daily Western life and which ones don't is sometimes a practical matter of which experiences can you recreate. But this one, to me, being so fixed in time, because you have to schedule it with another person, and they only
Mm-hmm.
have so much time in a day, and it gets rid of some of the ambiguity to me of personal practice, the idea of personal practice, and so it makes it easier for me to try and fit it in. But another thing that it does that's really important to me is that it it disabuses me of the notion that I'm on my own here. On some
Mm-hmm.
level, that is the message of Dokusan, is like, you're on your own. I can't like hold your hand through this. Like, you have to do it yourself. But having someone there to tell me that is that is enough to feel like I'm supported, that I'm part of something in the social sphere. Sensei's got his four spheres: the the personal, the social, the
Yeah.
societal, the universal, whatever it is. The moving Zen out into those middle ones of being in relationship, to me, is a really critical part of bridging the gap between householder existence and this radically personal thing that happens in Zen life. And Dokusan is one, certainly, of several things that we might call Sangha practice that do that create that bridge. But it's really critical for me, because it's the person who says to me, you have time to be a human being in the world and also to do Zen practice, because look at me, I did it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, he talks about the like being a Zen priest as a retirement option. That's his like vocabulary for it, is like it's something you should do after you have a whole life and career. And that's what he did. But he had the Zen practice all the while.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And like that's the thing that's why I benefit from Dokusan with him so much, is because he wasn't living in a monastery. He was living life. And, you know, he says this all the time. And I think I've said this on the show before, but he talks about people who feel really super guilty about missing Dokusan or not being able to come. And he says, you're still having Dokusan with me. You're just, you know, you're having it by yourself. And because, you know, it's like that Zen story about the monks carrying the woman across the river in the rain, and the one says to the other, how could you do that? You touched a woman, like that's so yucky. And the other one said, I put her down. You're still carrying her, you know? And that is the relationship that I have with Dokusan now, is like, he's around in this way that is there for me when I need him, when he's not really there, you know? And that's really worth it to make the time for me, because it's a gut check and an ego check, and all of these beautiful experiences that I have all by myself sitting on a cushion are reflected back in a way that I can see almost objectively as a result. So I can't solve your scheduling problem, but I can definitely say it's worth it. Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web at aszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.